My name's Olivia Monroe, and if you'd told me a year ago that my husband would run off with our surrogate and my baby, I'd have laughed you out of my designer kitchen. Because back then, everything in my life looked perfect. Instagram perfect. Lakeview perfect. The kind of perfection that comes with a $3.4 million house, country club memberships, and a husband who wore tailored guilt like a cologne. Lucas and I were the couple everyone envied. He was the kind of man who could walk into a room and charm even the people who hated him. He had that CEO glow. Handsome, polished, unshakable. And me? I was the picture-perfect wife. The one with the charity board seat, the French manicure, the carefully curated, authentic smile. But perfection comes with a price. Ours was infertility. We'd tried everything: IVF, hormone therapy, needles, clinics, hope. I'd spent years tracking cycles like military operations. Every test that came back negative felt like a funeral for a future I couldn't have. And Lucas? He'd always say, "It's okay, Liv. We'll find another way." But I could see the disappointment in his eyes when he thought I wasn't looking. So, when we finally hired a surrogate, I thought it was our second chance. Her name was Harper Lane. Mid-20s, bright-eyed, and all sunshine wrapped in yoga pants. She came from Portland, said she wanted to help another woman become a mom. She was kind, open, funny, the kind of girl who could make you feel seen, even when you didn't want to be. I should have known right there. Women like Harper don't just walk into your life for free. The first time we met was at a boutique coffee shop downtown. Lucas was late, of course. Harper was early. She was sipping some oat milk latte and scrolling through Pinterest boards for baby nursery inspo. I liked her immediately. Or at least I told myself I did. She had this warmth that felt effortless, something I'd lost somewhere between appointments and heartbreak. When Lucas arrived, she looked up and smiled, and he smiled back in a way I hadn't seen in years. It was subtle, just a flicker, but I caught it, that spark, the kind that ruins everything later. We started the process: contracts, clinics, counseling sessions. Harper passed every screening: background, psychological, physical. The doctor called her the ideal candidate. Lucas and I joked about how it was like adopting a uterus, but deep down, something about it felt off. I remember the night before the embryo transfer. I couldn't sleep. Lucas was downstairs in his office, working. I walked in quietly, wearing one of his shirts, hoping for a moment of closeness. But his laptop screen glowed bright, and I saw her name, Harper. They were texting. "Can't believe it's tomorrow." So nervous, but excited too. "You'll be amazing. We're lucky to have you." Lucky to have you. Not me. Not us. I didn't say anything that night. I just walked back upstairs, crawled into bed, and stared at the ceiling until the morning light hit the window. The transfer was successful. Everyone cheered. Harper cried. Lucas hugged her longer than necessary. I stood there smiling for the cameras and nurses, pretending I didn't feel the world tilting under me. The next few months were a blur of doctor visits, ultrasounds, and endless praise for how incredible Harper is. My in-laws adored her. My mother said, "She's such a blessing." Meanwhile, I was the ghost in my own motherhood story. By month 5, Lucas had started going to check-ins without me. He'd say, "You've got work, Liv. Don't stress. I'll take care of it." And stupidly, I let him. Until one night, he didn't come home. I called, texted, nothing. Around midnight, my phone buzzed. A photo. Lucas, and Harper. At a restaurant. Laughing. His hand on hers. My husband. My surrogate. My nightmare. I confronted him the next morning. He didn't even try to deny it. "It's not what you think," he said, shirt half-buttoned, eyes tired.
"Oh, so you're not sleeping with the woman carrying my child." He sighed. "Liv, you're being dramatic." "Dramatic?" I screamed. "You impregnated another woman, technically me, and now you're having date nights?" He ran a hand through his hair, that stupid calm tone still in place. "You're losing perspective." "No, Lucas, I finally found it." He left for work without another word. That night, I sat in the nursery, still unfinished, and stared at the crib. My hands shook as I picked up a small onesie I'd bought months ago. Mommy's miracle. It hit me then. He didn't see me as a mother anymore. He saw me as a problem. And Harper? She saw me as a threat. 2 weeks later, I got a call from the clinic. "Mrs. Monroe, just confirming Harper's travel to Aspen for the 3rd trimester wellness retreat." "Excuse me?" "Mr. Monroe approved it. He'll be joining her." That's when I realized I wasn't invited to my own pregnancy. I tried calling him, no answer. Texted her, no response. By day 3, I'd packed a bag and flown to Aspen myself. When I arrived at the luxury wellness lodge, they told me Mrs. Monroe's suite was already checked in. "What?" The receptionist smiled politely. "Mr. and Mrs. Monroe are in the spa." My blood went cold. I followed the sound of laughter down the hall. There they were, wrapped in matching white robes, her pregnant belly between them, his hand resting on it like it was his firstborn miracle. My body froze. My heart didn't. She looked up, startled. "Olivia, I slapped him, hard. The sound cracked through the marble lobby like a gunshot. He didn't even flinch, just looked at me with that same infuriating calm. "This isn't the place," he said quietly. "No," I spat. "You made this the place." Security escorted me out. My husband didn't even follow. The tabloids called it the Aspen Incident. My PR team spun it as emotional exhaustion. But I didn't care. I wasn't crying over him anymore. I was planning. Because while Lucas and Harper were off living their perfect pregnancy fantasy, I was digging. Contracts, payments, ownership rights. I learned that legally, until the baby was born, I still had parental authority. Harper couldn't make decisions without my consent. Neither could he. And that tiny clause buried in the surrogacy agreement, it gave me the right to determine custody at birth. All I needed was proof, something to destroy them both. I hired a private investigator. 2 weeks later, he handed me a file. Photos, receipts, emails, proof that Lucas had been wiring Harper money, tens of thousands, from our joint account, property transfers, one in her name. They were building a life together, without me. But here's the thing about betrayal. It doesn't break women like me. It builds something much sharper. So I smiled for the cameras, posted brunch photos, laughed at charity galas, because revenge looks better in heels. And when Harper went into labor, I was right there, front row, watching everything fall into place. The baby cried. A boy. My boy. Harper looked exhausted. Lucas looked triumphant. "Welcome to the world, little man." He brushed her hair back. Then I stepped forward. "Actually," I said, holding up a signed court order, "he's coming home with me." Their faces drained of color. Harper whispered, "You can't do this." "Watch me," I said. Because she stole my motherhood, my husband, and my peace. But she forgot one thing. Olivia Munro doesn't lose. She learns how to bury you beautifully.
The moment I walked out of that hospital with my baby in my arms, I knew there was no going back. Lucas shouted my name down the hall, his voice raw, desperate, pathetic. Harper sobbed into her hospital gown like she'd been robbed. Maybe she had. But that child was mine. By blood, by law, by the hell I had endured to bring him into this world. The cameras flashed outside the hospital entrance. I kept my head high. Chanel coat, sunglasses, no tears. Just a mother reclaiming her throne. The headlines hit within hours. CEO's wife reclaims baby from surrogate drama. The world ate it up. Public sympathy flooded in, and I played my role perfectly. Heartbroken but strong, betrayed but graceful. Lucas, on the other hand, was roasted alive online. Every brand partnership he had started quietly pulling away. Investors reevaluated their positions. Karma didn't always wait for the afterlife. Sometimes it came with a press release. Harper vanished from social media 2 days later. Lucas moved out of our mansion and into some sterile high-rise downtown. He texted once, "We need to talk about custody." I replied, "Already handled. Check your email." He didn't text again. But I knew this wasn't over. Men like Lucas don't lose quietly. They regroup. They manipulate. They find new angles. And I was ready for every single one. The first month home was brutal but beautiful. I named my son Noah. Every time I held him, I felt something I hadn't in years. Purpose. Not the kind that comes with charity galas or magazine covers. The kind that makes you fierce, dangerous. I'd rock him to sleep and whisper promises. "You'll never have to beg to be chosen, baby." Not like I did. One night, around 2 a.m., I got a text from an unknown number. "He's not yours." I stared at the screen, my heart slamming in my chest. Then another text came in. "DNA doesn't lie." Attached was a document. Harper's handwriting, messy and rushed. Paternity test results pending. Father, Lucas Munro. Mother, Harper Lane. My blood ran cold. I called my lawyer the next morning. "They're bluffing," he said, flipping through the surrogacy contract. "She carried your embryo. There's no biological link to her." Then how the hell did she get that paper? Probably fake, or part of whatever stunt they're planning next. But I couldn't shake it. The thought that somehow, somewhere, Lucas had switched something. He'd always been the numbers guy, the details man. He had access to everything, labs, accounts, signatures. It wouldn't take much to reroute a sample, to make me doubt. And that's what this was, a mind game. Fine, two could play. I hired another investigator, this time one who specialized in digital forensics. Within a week, he found the truth. Harper and Lucas had altered the medical records, used an alias, falsified a genetic match between them, all to discredit me. They wanted to prove you're not the mother. If that leaked, you'd lose public sympathy and possibly custody. I leaned back in my chair, staring out the floor-to-ceiling windows of my office. Downtown glittered below, beautiful and shallow, just like him. "Then we go on offense," I said. "I want every receipt, every message, every lie." That night, I went through the drive of photos, videos, documents the investigator sent. In one folder, I found a recording. Lucas and Harper at some cozy Airbnb, wine glasses clinking, baby shopping catalogs spread on the table. She was glowing. He looked high on love and guilt. "Once the baby's here, we'll be free," Harper said softly. "No more pretending, no more hiding." "Do you think she suspects? Liv?" He laughed bitterly. "She suspects everything. That's why she'll lose." That one sentence burned itself into me. That's why she'll lose. I closed the laptop and looked over at the baby monitor. Noah's soft breaths filled the silence. "Guess again," I whispered. The next morning, I called an old friend, Melanie. PR shark, ruthless when properly motivated. "You want a comeback?" she said. "Or a massacre?" "Both," I said. She grinned through the phone. "Perfect." We crafted a narrative. Grieving wife, strong mother, betrayed philanthropist. Every magazine wanted my story. Every talk show wanted a soundbite. I gave them exactly what they craved. Poise with pain. "I just want to raise my son in peace," I said on live TV. my voice breaking perfectly on cue. Despite everything, I believe in forgiveness. America ate it up. Harper tried going to the press a week later, claiming the baby isn't hers. Nobody believed her. She looked unstable, bitter, desperate. Lucas tried to sue for visitation rights. The judge denied it. I sent him a card after the hearing. No words, just a photo of Noah holding my finger. The caption? Still not losing. For a few months, it was quiet. Too quiet. Then one morning, I got a letter. No return address. Inside, a wedding invitation. Lucas Monroe and Harper Lane. The date? Exactly 1 year from the day of Noah's birth. My hand shook, not from heartbreak, but from disbelief. They were turning their betrayal into a spectacle. But the note at the bottom was what made me laugh out loud. Formal attire requested, gifts optional. I poured myself a glass of wine, smirked, and whispered, "Oh, honey, my gift's already on the way." Because if they thought they'd humiliated me once, they hadn't seen anything yet. A week later, I started moving pieces. Quietly. Deliberately. A fake charity grant in Harper's name. Anonymous tips to the IRS about Lucas's creative accounting. A discreet donation to a gossip columnist with access to Harper's bridal designer. Within days, the whispers began. Did you hear about the Monroe scandal? Apparently, he's being investigated. She's pregnant again, but this time it's his assistants. None of it confirmed, all of it damaging. Harper's sponsors pulled out. Lucas's board threatened to suspend him. And just when their lives started unraveling, I sent one final message. A photo. Of me and Noah at the lake house Lucas had given Harper. Caption? Hours now. That night, he showed up at my door, unannounced. Wild-eyed, broken. You think this is funny? You think you can ruin me? I tilted my head, calm as glass. I don't think, Lucas. I know. You don't understand what you've started. Oh, I understand perfectly. I'm finishing it. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. You're sick, Liv. I smiled. Maybe, but I'm still winning. He stared at me like he didn't recognize me anymore. Maybe he didn't. The woman he married was gone. The one standing before him was forged from betrayal. He left without another word. As the door clicked shut, Noah started crying upstairs. I picked him up, holding him close. You're safe. And Mommy's just getting started. Because they thought taking my baby was the end of my story. But it was just the prequel to theirs, the one where I burn down everything they built and make them thank me for the warmth. They sent me the invitation like they were handing me an insult wrapped in ribbon. Lucas and Harper. Next month, black tie. Join us as we celebrate our love. It literally said that, like some Hallmark card written by a PR intern. I stared at the thick paper for a long time, the name of the venue embossed in gold. The Belvedere, the most photographed ballroom in the city. The kind of place where people who don't love you still want to be seen. My first instinct was to burn it. My second instinct, because burning things is dramatic and I prefer surgical, was to RSVP yes, and then design a way to make sure that invitation was the worst decision they'd ever made. There's an old trick in warfare. You attack the enemy's supply lines. In marriages, the supply lines are reputation, money, and allies. I closed that triangle like a clamp and started turning the screws. First move, the guest list. Harper's bridal party was all influencers and spa moms who'd loved the soft lighting and the mirror selfies. Lucas's side was board members, investors, and the kind of men who think loyalty is a button you can press for a discount. I couldn't get them all to uninvite themselves, but I could make the night toxic for them. I fed my PR team a drip of dirt, anonymous tips about vendor fees that had been donated to fake charities, about how the champagne list was a shell company's expense disguised as a wedding perk. I knew exactly which board members would panic about optics if their names were connected to questionable benefits. The emails were polite, but cruel. Given the recent headlines involving your associates, some guests have requested anonymity for the evening. I understand completely if you'd prefer to opt out. A week later, 3 sponsors pulled their RSVPs. One big-name donor canceled. The dinner menu changed. The floral designer texted me unprompted to say she was too busy that weekend. Little dominoes toggled. Next, the vendors. Weddings are built on trust, contracts, deposits, personal relationships. I started with the caterer. I mentioned casually to their manager that the wedding had been linked to alleged financial misconduct. Suddenly, the caterer was getting phone calls from news producers. They backed out. The Belvedere called their internal event coordinator and panic bought a replacement at 3 times the original rate. I leaked a receipt to the columnist, who loved humiliating entitled men. He ran it. Groom's team shells out hush money to cover vendor fees, one headline teased. The panic spread like cheap rosé. Vendors scurried, guests whispered, and Harper's carefully curated fantasy started to creak. But I wasn't stopping at logistics. I aimed for the heart, the vows, the speeches, the moment they expected to be immortalized in an Instagram highlight. I needed testimony from the people closest to them to turn the wedding into the most watched train wreck of the season. Trent, remember him? He'd been the one who recorded Vanessa confessing. He owed me a favor after I helped him with a quiet divorce settlement years ago. He was in my pocket. He agreed to record anything he heard at the rehearsal, casual comments, worried mutters, any slip of the tongue that showed their intent. He was a decent man. His life had been saved, indirectly, by the crack in my armor I'd once opened for him, and he wasn't above a little payback. Legal maneuvers came next. I filed a quiet injunction that would require Lucas to appear before a judge the morning after the wedding. The kind of procedural subpoena that doesn't announce itself on party invitations, but ruins private jets. The law clerk who pushed the paperwork across my desk was an old college friend who owed me a favor for a scholarship I'd quietly accelerated years ago. He smiled like I'd handed him a secret. He said, "We'll make it clean." Clean and cruel. The idea was this: make Lucas choose between walking down an aisle with me breathing in his ear or walking into a courtroom with cameras circling like vultures.
All of it felt deliciously petty when I typed it out. But make no mistake, this was surgical. I kept one eye on my son, Noah, and the other on the angle where this hurt the most. People think revenge means ruining someone's life permanently. That's melodrama. The kind of ruin I wanted was public, undeniable, and slow enough to humiliate, but fast enough to keep them from salvaging the narrative. I wanted them to be ashamed not only for what they've done, but for how loudly they'd bragged about it. The week before the wedding, I did something that felt like a small betrayal even to myself. I called Harper. Her number was still active. She answered in that breathy voice that used to fill me with bile. "Olivia," she said, like I was someone who needed permission to exist. "I'm surprised you called." "Congratulations," I said. The word tasted like an apology I didn't mean. "I hope your day is everything you want it to be." She laughed, sharp and practiced. "We're so excited. You'll be there, right?" "Wouldn't miss it," I said calmly. In reality, I almost did. I wanted to watch them fall apart like porcelain. I wanted to be the one who held the camera steady when the cracks spurred. The night before, I couldn't sleep. Strings of anxiety buzzed through me like static. Mel had told me to be careful. Revenge can flip. But melatonin and a stiff glass of something brown eventually did its job, and sleep took me, shaky and brief. The morning of the wedding felt surreal. Sunlight bouncing off the lake, a hush on the streets like the city itself was holding its breath. I dressed in black, because weddings are the only places where death and joy share a DJ, and black was honest. Noah was asleep in his nursery, breathing like a blessing, and I kissed his forehead, promising him not to lose myself in the theater of hate. Then I went. The Belvedere was a cathedral of curated taste that day. Marble floors, crystal chandeliers that threw little rainbows against white linen. Women in silk moved with practiced breath. Men adjusted collars like teetering dominoes. I walked in with my heels in control and my smile polished. People looked at me the way people look at storms. Respectful, a little afraid. The photographers, some of whom I'd quietly tipped earlier, smiled wide and offered me a last-minute portrait. "You look stunning," one said, and I meant it when I answered, "I feel like it." Harper floated down the aisle in a dress that cost more than my car. Lucas stood at the altar with the same hollow grin he'd worn in Aspen. He was tamping down nerves with the same professional indifference he used to soothe investors. He caught my eye for a flash. Anger, pleading, arrogance, 3 faces in one. Maybe he couldn't stop himself from searching for approval on the one face that mattered most. The ceremony had the patter of a rom-com until the officiant began the vows. Guests leaned in to capture everything. Phones rose like a small army. I'd propped Trent and another witness, an ex-PR consultant who smelled faintly of bourbon and courage. They were ready to keep their phones hidden and record, ready to capture anything that might betray them. I sat, hands folded, heart steady. You can fake many things in life, but not the exposure of truth under lights. Lucas's vows were slick, polished, corporate. He thanked her for bringing meaning into his life, for redefining family. Those sentences were obviously rehearsed. Harper's voice shook when she spoke, then steadied into practiced tenderness. So perfect it tasted like calcium. Then Trent stood to read his toast. He'd been asked by Harper to be a groomsman. The irony delighted me. He cleared his throat, and maybe he was drunk on nostalgia. He said, "I remember when Lucas called me the night he was about to propose. He said, 'I finally found someone who makes me forget about the—'" He stopped. Laughter rippled. He smiled, and then he pulled out his phone like it was nothing. He said, "I finally found someone who makes me forget about Olivia." The room did a polite laugh because that is what rooms do when they don't know how to process venom. Trent's fingers moved just enough to show a text bubble to the camera on the table. The bubble read, "I can't wait until we don't have to pretend anymore. When she's gone for her husband's alibi, we'll have our life." Everyone gasped, like someone had flipped a switch. Harper's face drained. Lucas's jaw clenched so hard you could see the tendon. For a second, they were unmasked. Trent kept speaking, his voice steady now, the recorder on. He said, "And then there are these messages." And the room smelled of lemons and regret. He read one. "He's been talking about cutting ties. Tonight is the celebration of our new chapter." A man near the back muttered, "What the hell?" The chatter rose like wind. I sat very still. This is what I'd built toward. Not violence, not threats, but the slow undoing of performance. They had curated an image of love. I undid it in real time. Harper tried to laugh it off, but in the way of people caught in lies, the laughter collapsed into hysteria. She clutched a tissue to her mouth. "Trent, you're drunk. This is cruel." "No," Trent said quietly, voice steady like metal. "It's the truth." A phone camera streamed live, and the footage spread within minutes.
Ivory's on the piano sobbed as if in sympathy. But the real coup came later in the evening during the speeches. My lawyer, no, not the one who'd helped me with the injunction, a different one this time, the type who smelled of expensive cologne and courtroom victories, stood up and asked for attention as if hosting a toast. He reported, politely, that there had been a clerical update to a financial inquiry that morning. There had been an extension of an SEC subpoena to include Lucas Monroe's personal accounts. There were murmurs. Men who invest in clean numbers and tidy reputations fidgeted. On the floor, I could feel the room's tectonic plates shift. Lucas's face went from smug to pale. He stumbled through the rest of the night like a man decades older. His words slurred in a way the tabloids would later call tragic. Harper whispered into his ear, hands shaking. People clustered into groups, making decisions about whether to stay, to appear as allies, or to slip out quietly lest their own names be painted by proximity to scandal. Patrons who'd once leaned over to compliment him now kept their distance. Weddings are a microcosm. It's never about the couple entirely, it's about everyone who benefits from the illusion. And then, When all seemed contained to moral outrage and social collapse, something happened that nobody had scripted. The Belvedere's general manager, a man I'd bribed with a whisper and a donation weeks before, got a call. He came over to the head table with color in his face, like he'd swallowed a lemon whole. "Ms. Monroe," he said, voice quivering, "I hate to disturb, but there's a matter of public safety at the back entrance." Lucas stood up, eyes wild. He walked toward the back like a man on a string, pulled by something deeper and darker than embarrassment. That's when the motorcycle roared up. A black motorbike, sudden and ridiculous against the careful arrangements. A man jumped off, helmet in hand, laughing like a madman, and then he pulled out an envelope and waved it in the air. Flashbulbs popped. The air smelled like gasoline and chaos. People turned, cameras swiveled. We all saw the envelope. We all knew what it meant. A live leak, a stunt, a last-minute attempt at narrative control. He jumped up on a chair and shouted, "To the couple who built their love on stolen names and fake lab results, here's some paperwork you might have missed." He tossed the folder toward the stage and it exploded like confetti across the marble. Receipts, contracts, a small flash drive clattered like pieces of a broken mirror. My lawyer clenched his jaw and picked up a paper. My investigator was at my elbow in a flash, hat and plaid, nodding. The footage from the live stream focused on Lucas as he picked up the envelope and read it. For the first time that evening, he looked legitimately scared. Then, the police walked in. Not a handful, an entire team. Rivera, Agent Rivera, who'd once worked a minor donation fraud case with me in part 2 of my life, was there, crisp and hard-eyed, surrounded by federal agents. They moved with the mechanical grace of people who had surveillance feeds and warrants. They had more than gossip. They had probable cause. Lucas was asked to stand and come with them. He protested, loudly, theatrically, the kind of protests that make cameras drool. But the cuffs went on. His board members stood in stunned silence. Guests whispered and then applauded like the audience at a badly written play. Harper? She went pale, mouth gaping, then swayed. Her husband, my husband, was led out of the hall, past his mother, past old friends, past the bar where he'd toasted his future. People followed, phones lifted high like tiny witnesses. I sat very still while the scene unfolded like some grotesque opera. The violinist's bow trembled, champagne fizzed, and went flat.
When it was over, the Belvedere smelled of fear and spilled drink. Photographers circled like vultures. Rivera met my eyes across the room. An unspoken thank you, a recognition that we'd played a part in the trap. His agent took a taped, careful statement from me, evidence of the transfers, the emails, the fake lab reports. I watched Lucas being led away and felt something cold and exquisite bloom in my chest. It wasn't happiness. It was a sharp, consuming satisfaction. We drove home that night in silence. Noah slept in his car seat, unaware that the world had rearranged on his behalf. I cupped his tiny head and whispered verses I'd learned from women who survived worse. "You're safe," I told him. "Everything's changing, but you're safe." The fallout was immediate. Lucas's name disappeared from magazine covers. His political donors retracted. Investors asked for emergency meetings. Harper checked herself into a program after the public humiliation. The press wrote tragically about the young woman led astray. Papers debated the ethics of surrogacy. Comment sections exploded like angry wasps. I watched it all, my face calm on television screens, my voice measured in interviews. I let them paint me as a scorned woman, let them stack their sympathy in my favor. It was an excellent narrative. But the night the arrests happened and the social feeds lit up like a wildfire wasn't the end. It was the climax of a chapter, not the book. Karma had been served cold, but I could feel a tremor of something else at the edges, like a new storm forming. That's when I opened the small black envelope sitting on my hallway console, the one I'd been too wired to touch amidst champagne and headlines. Inside was a single index card, no return address. Nothing fancy, just my name written in a hand I recognized with a prick of old hurt. The card read, "Nice work, but check the lab. They found something else. Call me when you're ready. A friend."
My throat tightened. My skin hummed. Who had left it? What did they mean something else? I thought of the forged paternity tests, the lab tech with shaky hands who owed me a favor, the watermarked emails that had made Lucas's face go from smug to pale. Someone else had been in those rooms. Someone who knew about biological sample switches, who could plant a seed of doubt that might undo even this public triumph. I put the card down and walked to Noah's room. He was awake, blinking into the dim nightlight. He laughed, tiny and content, and for a second the world seemed small enough to hold him safe. Then the line buzzed on my phone. Unknown number. A photo attached. A vial in a lab container, labeled with my name and a date, something I'd not seen. The caption, "You thought this was only about money and names. Think again. You're not the only one who can weaponize the truth." My hands shook as the call came through. The screen read, unregistered. I stared at it, heart pounding. The victory was brilliant, intoxicating, but now I'd been handed a new object, a cliff edge. I could have rested. I could have wrapped Noah in blankets and let the city forget me for a week. But that index card and that photo said something cold and clear. This story wasn't over. Someone else had a card on the table, and they weren't done playing. Because winning the wedding was beautiful and messy and public, but when an unknown player holds a vial marked with my name, I realized the game just leveled up. Whoever left that card knows secrets that could ruin me or save me. And I don't do well with mysteries. I want them solved, and I want payback to be surgical. So buckle up. Part 4 gets darker, and this time, I'm not only playing defense.
The moment I saw that silver vial in her hand, I knew the game wasn't just dirty, it was deadly. Harper stood there trembling, mascara streaked, whispering something about it wasn't supposed to go this far. Lucas's face was pale, his jaw tight like he was calculating damage instead of guilt. "What the hell is that?" I demanded. Harper tried to back away, but I grabbed her wrist. "Don't you dare lie to me." "It's nothing, just supplements." "Bullshit." I twisted the cap off. The smell hit me first. Chemical, sharp, wrong. "Oh my God, Harper, what did you do?" She started sobbing. "I didn't know. He said it was just to calm me down. Lucas said—" "What did Lucas say?" I snapped. "That it would help me sleep," she cried. My head spun. Lucas took a step toward me, voice low. "Liv, put that down. You don't know what you're dealing with." "Oh, I know exactly what I'm dealing with," I said, my voice shaking. "A liar, a thief, and a murderer in the making." "Olivia," he hissed, "you're losing control again." "No," I said, staring at the vial. "I'm finally getting it back." I walked out, ignoring Harper's crimes. Outside, the storm was brutal, rain slicing through the night like glass. I called Mason, my PI. "Run a tox test, priority." He didn't ask questions. He knew better. "You got it. Results by morning." I barely slept that night. The baby's monitor glowed beside me, soft and steady. Every time he breathed, I reminded myself, he's mine. No one's taking him again. By sunrise, Mason called. "You're not gonna like this," he said. "Try me." The compound's a sedative derivative, illegal but used in private clinics to manipulate hormonal compliance. Meaning? Meaning if someone slipped this into Harper's prenatal care, they could have kept her calm or compliant. My stomach dropped. "You're saying Lucas drugged her? Or someone did under his name?" That's when my gut twisted. Someone else was in this. Someone who wanted me destroyed beyond just heartbreak. I checked my emails. Buried between spam and invoices was one that made my blood run cold. Subject line, "You're not the only one who lost something." No sender, no signature. Just one attachment. One photo. Harper, holding my baby, in a hospital, and Lucas beside her. Date stamped 2 weeks before delivery. My world tilted. That wasn't possible. Harper had told me she went into labor early, but that photo, she was full term, which meant they'd lied about the birth date, which meant my custody order had been filed after the baby was technically theirs. "They faked it," I whispered. "They played me." I drove straight to Mason's office, adrenaline burning through me. He scanned the metadata. Yep, hospital in Tahoe. Date checks out. Someone changed the official delivery records afterward. Who has that power? Someone with money or connections.
Both, I said bitterly. Lucas. But Mason shook his head. Not necessarily. There's another name on the billing records. He slid the paper across the desk.
I froze. Eleanor Monroe, Lucas's mother. I sat there in silence, bile rising. Eleanor, the queen of manipulation. The woman who once told me I wasn't Monroe enough to carry the family name. I thought she'd hated me because I couldn't conceive, but no. She hated me because I wasn't controllable. She's the one who funded Harper's contract, Mason continued. Every payment Lucas made, it routed through a trust Eleanor manages. She planned this, I whispered. All of it. The affair, the baby, the scandal. Why? He asked. Because she wanted the heir, I said, voice breaking. She wanted a Monroe bloodline, and I was in the way. I left his office numb. My phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. If you want your son safe, come to the lake house, alone. My hands shook. I grabbed my car keys and drove. The old Monroe Lake House sat at the edge of the property, once our summer retreat, now their secret lair. When I arrived, the door was ajar. Eleanor? I called out. No answer, just the faint sound of music. Classical, deliberate. I stepped inside. Harper was there. Eyes swollen, hands shaking. She said she'd kill me if I told you. Who? Eleanor, she whispered. She made me take the drugs, said it was for stability. She made Lucas think it was his idea. She controlled everything. My heart pounded. Where's Lucas? He left, said he was done, but she said the baby wasn't safe with you. She wants to file guardianship. I blinked. She can't. I'm the mother. She has papers, Olivia. Real ones. Where is she now? Harper glanced toward the window. I turned and froze. Eleanor stood on the porch, umbrella in hand, her posture perfect, face calm as ever. Olivia, she said, her voice cutting through the rain, you've made such a mess. You drugged your surrogate? You forged records. I protected my family, she said, something you never understood. He's my family. She smiled coldly. You think that child is yours? He's a Monroe. He belongs to us. Over my dead body. That can be arranged. Before I could react, Harper screamed. A flash of silver, Eleanor lunged, syringe in hand. I grabbed her wrist, slamming it against the counter. The needle shattered. You really thought I'd let you take my son? I said, breathing hard. He's not yours, Olivia. He's our legacy. He's not a legacy. He's a baby. I shoved her back. She stumbled, hit the edge of the counter, and went down hard. Silence. Harper gasped. Oh my God. Call 911, I said, shaking. My hands were bloody. Do it now. But before she could dial, Eleanor moved, eyes wide, voice faint. He's not Lucas's child. I froze. What? DNA switched. And then she was gone. Harper and I stared at each other. What does she mean? Harper's voice broke. Switched with who? The baby monitor on my phone buzzed. An unknown access detected. My security cam. My heart dropped. Someone was in my house. The feed flickered. Lucas, holding my son, smiling. I thought the monster was dead. Turns out, he'd just been waiting for me to bury his mother before taking what was left of my soul.
I don't remember the drive home, just the pounding in my chest and the taste of fear burning through me. The storm hadn't stopped. It just followed me. By the time I pulled into the driveway, lightning cracked above the house like the universe was watching. My baby, my son, my reason for surviving. Lucas had him. The front door was unlocked. That was the first clue he wanted me to come in. I stepped inside, slow, careful. The nursery camera blinked red. "Lucas," I called out, voice trembling, "you don't have to do this." "Don't I?" His voice came from upstairs, low and deliberate. "You took everything from me, Liv. The company, the house, my mother." "You took those yourself," I shot back, climbing the stairs. "All I did was pull the curtain off your lies." I reached the top step, and there he was, Lucas Monroe, perfectly put together, like he hadn't just kidnapped a child. He was standing in the nursery doorway, holding our son in his arms. "You don't deserve him," he said softly. "You used everyone. Harper, me, my family. You used my womb," I snapped. "You built your empire on my pain." He smirked. "You always had a flair for drama. Maybe that's why I fell for you." "No," I said. "You fell for control, and you lost it." His jaw tightened. "You think I lost? Look around, Olivia. You've got blood on your hands and a family name rotting under your roof." He wasn't wrong. Eleanor's death was already a headline waiting to explode. But I didn't care. "Give me my son," I said, "now." He shook his head slowly. "He's not yours." The words hit harder than any slap. "I heard her," I said, voice shaking. "She said he's not your child. So whose is he, Lucas?" He hesitated just for a second, and that was all I needed. I lunged. The baby cried out as Lucas stumbled back, trying to keep balance. "Don't you dare hurt him!" I screamed. He gritted his teeth, eyes wild. "I would never hurt him. He's my legacy." "He's a person, not a project." We wrestled near the crib, hands slipping. I managed to grab the baby and step back, clutching him to my chest. Lucas froze, breathing hard, realizing what he'd lost. "You're insane," he whispered. "You're dangerous." "Maybe, but I'm done being your victim." He moved toward me, slow and calculated. "You won't make it out of this, Liv. You've got no one. No proof, no credibility. You'll be just another hysterical ex-wife on TV. "Oh, Lucas," I said, trembling but steady. "That's where you're wrong." I reached into my coat pocket and held up the small camera I'd clipped to my blouse earlier. The red light blinked. Recording. His face dropped. "Smile," I said. "You're live." He lunged, but I moved first, slammed the panic button on my phone. The siren blared through the security system, piercing and cold. "You called the cops?" "No," I said. "The FBI." He froze. "What the hell did you do?" "You laundered money through fake fertility contracts, you trafficked medical supplies, forged DNA records, bribed officials, and the best part?" I stepped closer, eyes locked on his. "You left a trail." His face twisted. "You think anyone will believe you. They already do." Tires screeched outside. Sirens. Flashing lights. He turned toward the window, disbelief on his face. "No, no, you didn't." "I did." The baby whimpered, and I kissed his forehead. "Because you can destroy my body, my marriage, my peace, but you'll never take my truth." The front door burst open. Agents poured in. "Lucas Monroe, you're under arrest." He turned to me, desperate now. "Liv, please, you don't understand. I did this for us. Us died the day you touched her." He tried to run, but they pinned him fast. Handcuffs clicked. He didn't fight, just stared at me like he'd lost something sacred. "He's not your son," he said again, voice shaking. "He's mine. Maybe not by blood, but by love. He's more mine than you ever were." They dragged him out into the rain. The storm swallowed him. I stood there in silence, rocking the baby, my tears finally falling. Hours later, I sat in the living room, the chaos gone, the air heavy. Mason came in quietly. "You did it," he said. "It's over." "Is it?" I asked, staring at the baby monitor. "You think this ends just because he's in cuffs?" Mason sighed. "What did she mean, Eleanor? About the DNA?" I shook my head. "I don't know, but I'm going to find out." He nodded. "You sure you want to go down that road? It's the only one I've got left."
Over the next few weeks, headlines exploded. Tech mogul Lucas Monroe arrested for fraud, bioethics violations. The media called me the scorned wife who exposed a billion-dollar baby scheme. They didn't know the half of it. I found out what Eleanor meant 2 days later. The DNA test came back. The baby wasn't biologically mine. Or Lucas's. My hands shook as I read the report again and again. Maternal sample, Harper Lane. Paternal sample, unknown donor. I called Harper immediately. What the hell happened? She sobbed through the line. They told me they'd used your embryos. But they didn't. They used a donor. One from Eleanor's private bank. She switched it. She wanted her own bloodline, Harper whispered. She thought if it wasn't yours or mine, she could raise him without you. I sat there stunned. She wanted to erase me completely. Olivia, Harper said quietly, what are you going to do? What I do best, turn their lies into leverage. The next morning, I filed for full adoption under maternal guardianship of undisclosed biological origin. It was legal armor. The court ruled in my favor on emotional grounds. Best interest of the child, they said. Lucas tried to fight from jail, but no one believed him anymore. His empire crumbled. His investors fled. The Monroe name became poison. And me? I rebuilt. Slowly, quietly. The house was too big, too empty, but every laugh from the nursery filled it again. Sometimes I'd catch the baby staring at the window, like he could still sense the ghosts outside. One night, I took him to the lake, the same one where everything started. I whispered, they wanted you for your bloodline, but I'll raise you for your heart. He smiled in his sleep like he knew. I looked up at the stars. Justice doesn't always come in courtrooms, I said softly. Sometimes it comes in lullabies. Weeks later, Mason came by with a file. One last thing, he said. You should see this. Inside was a letter, Eleanor's handwriting. If you're reading this, it means I failed. But know this, Olivia, you were never supposed to win. You were supposed to disappear. I smiled faintly. Guess your plan glitched, Eleanor. Mason chuckled. You know, for a socialite, you're one hell of a survivor. No, I said, holding my son close. I'm not a survivor. I'm a resurrection. He looked at me curiously. What are you going to do now? I smiled. Start living the life they tried to steal from me. And maybe, I added, looking at the window, write my own damn story. That night, I posted a final message on social media, a photo of me holding my baby, captioned, to everyone who watched me fall, thank you. You made me sharper. And to everyone who tried to bury me, surprise, I learned to grow roots underground. It went viral within hours. Because women like me, we don't just break, we rebuild in public. And when we come back unstoppable. I thought my revenge ended when Lucas was gone. But last night, someone left a silver vial on my porch with a note that said, Round 2 begins when he walks.
The silver vial sat on my porch like a curse. No note, no return address, just a small glass cylinder reflecting the porch light. Cold, deliberate. The handwriting on the tag was neat. Round 2 begins when he walks. I stared at it for a long time, my stomach twisting. It had been 6 months since Lucas's arrest, 6 months since I'd rebuilt the world he tried to burn down. My baby, Eli, had just started crawling, babbling his first syllables. My mornings were quiet, coffee and lullabies instead of lies and lawyers. Peace was foreign, but I was learning to live with it. Until that vial showed up. I called Mason. He picked up on the first ring. Liv, you sound spooked. Someone dropped something at my door. Another journalist? No, something worse.
Within an hour, Mason was at my place, standing over the kitchen counter, the vial between us. He wore gloves. Careful. "Looks like perfume," he said. "Or poison." I half laughed. With my luck, probably both. He gave me that look, the one that said, "Don't joke when it's serious." "You think it's from Lucas?" "He's in a federal facility," I said. "He can't send packages." "You'd be surprised what money can do behind bars." I shook my head. No, this isn't his style. Lucas liked chaos, not symbolism. This, I pointed at the vial, this is personal. Mason frowned. "Someone else connected to the case?" "Maybe," I said. "Or maybe we missed a piece." That night, after Eli fell asleep, I sat by the window with the file Mason left. Every page screamed of betrayal. Harper's emails, Lucas's transactions, Eleanor's notes. But something kept nagging me. The fertility clinic's name, Vitagen Labs. The same one tied to Eleanor's secret embryo experiments. And, buried in the fine print of the surrogacy contract, was a single clause. Specimen ownership reserved by funding donor. The donor hadn't been me or Lucas. It was Eleanor, meaning she still had rights, posthumously, over the genetic material. And, if someone inherited her estate, they'd inherit those rights. My blood ran cold. Eleanor's estate had gone to her business heir. Mason hadn't found a name back then. But I knew who would. I called in a favor from an old contact in corporate law, Hayes, a shark in heels who owed me one. "You still got that access to probate filings?" I asked. She hummed. Depends who you're digging into." Eleanor Monroe. A pause. "Olivia, are you sure you want to open that can again?" "It's already open." She sighed. "Give me 2 hours." When she called back, her voice had a tremor. "Her heir's name isn't public. It's sealed under a pseudonym." "Whose?" "A trust. The Mercer Foundation." My mind spun. "Mercer? As in—" "Yeah," Hayes said. "Dr. Simon Mercer, the head geneticist at Vitagen, the man who ran the program that made Eli possible, and the one who'd ghosted after Lucas's arrest." I hung up, pulse racing. Mercer wasn't just Eleanor's partner. He was the architect behind all of it. He had motive. He had access. He had my DNA. Mason called as I was throwing on a coat. "Where are you going?" "To end this." "Liv, don't do something stupid." "Too late," I said, and hung up. The drive to Vitagen's research compound took an hour, but my hands never stopped shaking. Snow fell in sheets across the windshield, the kind that made the world look softer when it wasn't. The building loomed in the dark like a ghost ship, glass and steel and secrets. Security was low. Money hides things better than guards ever could. I used the old ID badge Mason had recovered from the evidence vault. The scanner blinked green. Inside, the hall smelled like antiseptic and betrayal. I found Mercer's office on the 2nd floor. The door was ajar. Inside, he sat behind a desk, silver hair slicked back, eyes too calm for a man caught mid-crime. "Mrs. Monroe," he said without looking up, "I was wondering when you'd come." "So you've been keeping tabs?" "I prefer the term monitoring investments." I stepped closer. "You sent the vial? Consider it a warning." "About what?" He smiled faintly. "Round 2, as the message said." "What does that mean?" "You didn't think Eleanor's work ended with one child, did you?" My pulse jumped. "You're saying—" "There are others," he said. "Several. Experimental surrogates implanted before the shutdown. Children. Engineered. Enhanced. Yours was simply the prototype." My voice cracked. "You're lying." Am I? He slid a folder across the desk. Photos, babies, toddlers, birth records, all under aliases. They're out there, Mrs. Monroe, and now that the media's forgotten, I plan to continue her work. You're insane, I whispered. I'm visionary, he said, and you, well, you could have been part of it, but you ruined the operation. I grabbed the folder, shaking. Where are they? Safe, he said, for now. You can't just create people like lab projects. And yet, he said smoothly, you love one. My hand shot across the desk. You talk about my son again, and I swear, you'll what? He interrupted. Expose me. You already tried that. The government doesn't care, Olivia. They want results. And I deliver. Not anymore. I reached into my bag and tossed a small device on the desk. A red light blinked. Recording. You're live. Again. He chuckled. You think this will scare me? No, I said, but it'll end you. I'd set the signal to stream directly to Mason's encrypted channel. He was probably listening right now. Mercer's smirk faltered. You stupid girl. He lunged for the recorder, but I grabbed the folder and bolted. His shout echoed behind me as alarms blared. Security lights flashed red. I sprinted down the hall, clutching the evidence to my chest. A shot cracked through the air. Then another. Glass shattered above me. I ducked and ran. My heart pounded like a drum. The exit was ahead. 10 feet. 5. Then arms grabbed me from behind. I swung my elbow back, hit something soft, and broke free. Outside, snow swallowed everything. Headlights cut through the storm. Mason's SUV skidded to a stop. Get in, he yelled. I dove inside, slamming the door. Drive! He hit the gas. Behind us, figures poured out of the building, shouting. Mason glanced over. You good? I clutched the folder. Define good. What the hell is that? Proof. Mercer's creating more. His face went pale. Jesus. You're telling me there are more kids? More victims, I said, and he's calling it progress. We didn't speak again until we reached my house. Inside, the silence felt heavy. Eli stirred in his crib, peaceful, unaware. So what now? Mason asked. We go public again? I stared at the folder. No, not yet. Why the hell not? Because if we go public, they disappear the kids before anyone finds them. We do this quietly. We find them first. He rubbed his jaw. You're serious? I'm beyond serious. I poured a glass of wine with a shaking hand. They thought they could build life in a lab. Fine. I'll show them what happens when the experiment fights back. Over the next few weeks, we worked in secret, tracing adoption records, hospital transfers, medical invoices. One led to another, and then another. By March, we'd tracked 3 children to foster homes, 2 under false guardianships, 1 listed as deceased but wasn't. Every file had Mercer's signature buried somewhere in the fine print. Every life a transaction. Every lie another thread in the web Eleanor started. I couldn't sleep. Every night I'd watch Eli breathe and wonder how much of him was made and how much was mine. Then one evening, Mason called. Liv, you need to see this. He sent a video. Mercer standing at a podium addressing a private biotech conference. Project Genesis resumes under new funding, he said proudly. Our first success story, codename EM, is thriving. Proof that design can replace destiny. EM. Eli Monroe. My baby. I couldn't breathe. He's taunting you, Mason said quietly. He's making him a product. Not anymore, I whispered.
This ends tonight. I packed the folder, the recordings, the court orders, drove straight to the FBI's field office. The agent on duty raised an eyebrow when I dropped the stack on her desk. You'll want to sit for this, I said. It took 3 hours. By the time I was done talking, her face was pale. 2 days later, they raided Mercer's compound. It was on every news channel. Illegal genetic engineering operation exposed. Children recovered. 37 in total. 37 stolen beginnings. I watched the footage in silence, Eli sleeping in my arms. Mason sat beside me, eyes wet.
You did it, he said. No, I whispered. We did it. Them too. The FBI offered witness protection. I declined. I wasn't running again. Instead, I started something new, the Eleanor Project, repurposed and redefined, a foundation for ethical surrogacy, genetic transparency, and maternal rights. Irony, maybe. Redemption, definitely. Harper showed up one morning, holding a tiny bouquet. She looked worn, but free. You really did it, she said softly. You saved them. We saved them, I corrected. And I'm sorry for hating you. She nodded. I deserved it. But thank you for giving him a real mother. We stood there for a long time, two women bound by one impossible story, finally breathing again. Later that night, as the snow fell like ash outside, I rocked Eli to sleep. The world was quiet again. For now. But I knew better. Power like that doesn't die. It waits. I whispered, they wanted gods, but they created survivors. I thought of Lucas, still in prison, Mercer, facing trial, Eleanor, long gone but never truly dead in legacy, and me, Olivia Monroe, the woman who burned her gilded cage and built something unbreakable in its ashes. Weeks later, I received one last letter. No return address. Inside, a photo of a little girl, maybe 3 years old, with eyes like mine. On the back, a line in the same handwriting as the vial. She's one of yours, too. I froze. The fire crackled in the hearth, but I felt nothing but ice. Mason read over my shoulder, You think it's real? With my life, I said quietly. Then what do we do? I looked toward Eli's nursery, my heart pounding with a strange mix of dread and determination. We find her. Mason exhaled. And after that? I smiled sadly. After that, we raise an army. He laughed, half nervous, half awed. You really think this is over? No, I said, staring into the fire. I think it's just beginning. Because I used to think motherhood was about birth. Turns out, it's about resurrection. And I'm not done bringing what they buried back to life.
If this story touched your heart or made you feel every twist of pain and justice, don't forget to hit like and subscribe for more powerful stories like this. Your support means everything and keeps these emotions alive on screen. And before you go, leave your valuable thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear how this